Every word in this chapter seems to resonate deeply with me because, as I think about fornication and the culture of unbridled desire, I am struck by how much the world has normalized uncommitted sexual relations throughout history, almost as if it were a required custom for any young person who wishes to try the other before forming a closer bond. I examine how many men in the 25 to 34 age range have been exposed to this way of thinking, and I observe that commercials, films, and the entertainment sector as a whole foster the illusion that pursuing instant gratification without taking the repercussions into account would be harmless or even wise. Every time I think about this, though, I am reminded by my personal experiences that this way of living leaves profound emotional and spiritual scars. Without intending to pass judgment, I have witnessed men lose their shine when they prioritize fast gratification, frequently accumulating unresolved stories, silent traumas, and a sense of emptiness that cannot be satisfied by fleeting relationships. But from the perspective of someone who has already tripped over the same stone and witnessed firsthand the chasm that arises when we reduce what ought to be sacred to mere amusement. When it happens outside of a genuine commitment, the sexual act is more than just physical. It connects our soul, creates invisible bonds, and frequently causes us to bear an inner burden that hinders our future capacity for true love. In this context, I think seminal retention emerges as a counterculture proposal because it encourages us to reject the constant pursuit of transient pleasure and to develop a pure mindset, keeping in mind that the true meaning of intimacy is revealed when there is complete surrender rather than a simple exchange of physical stimuli. This exercise, in my opinion, is essential to rebuilding our inner strength because it pushes us to examine every facet of our affective, emotional, and spiritual lives, which in turn leads us to seek communion with God, appreciate ourselves more, and realize that everything has its proper moment. I admit that I grew up listening to speeches that said we would go insane if we didn't have sex often, that abstinence would be an outdated form of repression, or that it would be difficult to wait to have sex. Looking back today, I see how these voices, despite being in line with popular culture, did not accurately represent biblical teachings or the logic of a life built on genuine fulfillment that does not end in the moment, but it has strong, long-lasting underpinnings. The idea that sex has dimensions that extend much beyond the physical is something that many people overlook. When we trivialize the act of connection between two people, reducing it to a purely recreational realm, we are contradicting the way God intended and invited us to live. There is something very profound about this relationship, something that affects our nature. I've heard of young guys who, after engaging in a number of uncommitted relationships, experienced feelings of remorse and worthlessness, as though they had given a piece of themselves to someone who wasn't ready to cherish it. When we see that true intimacy requires commitment, maturity, and, most importantly, a feeling of dignity for both our own and the other's sexuality, this kind of wound creates scars that are hard to repair. I keep thinking about how many biblical verses stress the need to abstain from fornication and how this has nothing to do with arbitrary or ridiculous convention, but rather with protection and genuine love. In His infinite wisdom, God does not want us to live our lives mired in insecurity, envy, guilt, fear of unintended pregnancies, or the effects of STDs. Instead of a practice that, when taken out of context, destroys peace and creates interior alienation, He wants us to understand the beauty of an act that celebrates oneness. For me, this holy goal of maintaining the body's holiness is coupled with seminal retention. Since giving up the sexual urge is a mental release, it seems as though every day of self-control and discipline was a tangible step toward a life of liberation. I can recall how many times I have been tempted to pursue instant gratification, but by choosing self-control or abstinence, I have felt a sense of inner strength that surpasses any fleeting pleasure. Controlling our desires, in my opinion, allows us to recognize them as energy that can be used for things like serving God, growing personally. Think that this incredulity shows how little we trust ourselves and how the Spirit of God works in our lives. We start to view the entire fornication issue from a different angle, when we have faith that sexuality serves a higher purpose and is a celebration of a long-lasting partnership rather than a means of instant gratification. We view it as a risky shortcut that can impede our emotional and spiritual development rather than as harmless fun. And I say this because I know firsthand the difference between a relationship based on mutual respect, genuine love, and divine favor, and a short-lived journey that leaves a path of regret. I like to believe that every time we refrain from rushing into sexual activity, we give God the opportunity to work on our inner selves, developing our character, mending any old wounds, and getting us ready for total surrender when the time comes. At the ideal moment. I understand that the trip is difficult since temptations are everywhere. Our culture never stops telling us that we should enjoy every second and give in to all of our desires without considering the repercussions. However, I've found that this same society doesn't discuss the feelings of emptiness that follow short-lived relationships, or the worry and uncertainty that come up when someone feels taken advantage of, or recognizes they've used someone else to fulfill an internal need. There is nothing that can match to the sense of dignity and mental clarity that comes with chastity. As we learn to master our desires and channel this energy in a positive way, we are no longer held captive by uncontrollable impulses, and it seems as though every element of our lives is in harmony, and our future vision becomes more obvious. In my opinion, treating infidelity as a minor infraction can lead to a number of unintended consequences, including careless parenting, the spread of preventable diseases, family disintegration, and numerous other issues that affect multiple generations. However, it's lovely to see how seminal retention can help us regain our inner peace, develop a more focused mind, a more receptive heart, higher self-esteem, and more authentic relationships. I wonder how chastity is ultimately a form of love and how discipline fortifies both the body and the character. Love God, who wants the best for us. In order to protect ourselves from mental and physical harm, we must love ourselves. In order to create the anticipation of a marriage in which there will be complete dedication and no remnants of hurt or sad memories that haunt us, we must love the person who will one day be our husband. I can think of friends who made the decision to follow the path of purity and seminal retention after years of unrestrained sex, and I witnessed the real transformation of their lives. They set out to make a conscious effort to honor their own bodies and reclaim control over urges that had previously ruled them. And as a result, many started to have more energy. Some found greater significance in their routines, and some chose to reestablish broken family ties. Additionally, I recall biblical verses that make it very evident that the Lord does not wish to deny us happiness, but rather desires our whole fulfillment. And in order to do this, He highlights the perils of choosing pathways that were not intended for us. Fornication, which is frequently framed in terms of freedom and pleasure, but in reality leads to a maze of annoyances and distances, is one of these convoluted routes. At this point, seminal retention turns into a lifesaver, guiding our ship through a rough sea like a lighthouse. It reminds us that we can, in fact, say no, that we are not compelled to give in to every stimulus that comes our way, and that the inner strength we acquire from avoiding these temptations shows the strong person we can become in other spheres of life. On my own journey, I recall how challenging it was to prevail in some conflicts, particularly when the mind had grown used to caving in to cravings, stoking illusions, and pursuing immediate satisfaction without considering the consequences. However, once I started using seminal retention, I observed observable shifts in my relationships with others and with myself. I started to have more reverence for my experience, a desire to develop spiritually, and a desire to become more in line with the will of God. Sexuality was given a dignified position in this sanctification process, which ultimately revealed abilities and potentialities that had previously been concealed, possibly obscured by that constant pursuit of instant gratification. When men break free from the obsessive cycle of that when we follow this road, we are more likely to build strong relationships because we start to perceive other people as integral beings with their own problems, aspirations, and flaws. rather than just as sources of pleasure. I sense a persistent call to empathy in seminal retention, which reminds us that we should not emotionally harm someone out of an urgent desire, and encourages us to practice love that respects boundaries, cares, and saves itself for a truly favorable situation. It is something that turns intimacy into a holy, blessed, and significant act that goes beyond the worldly idea of sexual conquests. As I made this life commitment, I came to understand that because outside influences never go away, it is essential to seek spiritual support, whether it be through prayer, fasting, or counseling. Many people are urging us to give in to fornication, and occasionally they do so under the pretext of modernism, harmless pleasure, or social standing. However, the Bible is unambiguous in highlighting the importance of the body as the Spirit's temple and in pointing sexuality toward marriage, where it can completely develop without causing shame or alienation. Because I see how many men become lost in the maze of fleeting pleasures without a moral or spiritual compass to guide them, I, Laertes, the head of the gods of Seminal Channel, am continually inspired to spread these truths. I observe that many of them have grown weary of searching for purpose in things that merely provide momentary fulfillment, and have forgotten the value of a mature relationship that has been dedicated and established in accordance with divine will. Instead of being an unproductive practice of seclusion or renunciation, seminal retention benefits us greatly by teaching us endurance, dedication, and patience. Our character is honed and God's blessings are able to blossom in all aspects of our lives every day. We resist the urge to give in to our faulty desires. And we will enjoy sexuality as an expression of genuine love rather than as the product of unchecked cravings when the time comes to finally unite with someone, whether through marriage or a partnership firmly rooted in Christian values. I like how seminal retention encourages each man to examine his own reasons for frequently using other people's beds to fill voids that, in fact, require emotional support or healing. Sometimes we set out on experiences that leave scars and make it harder for us to commune with God because we fear loneliness, or because we want to prove something to ourselves or to society. However, we observe that this need for stimulation lessens when we learn to calm our minds, focus on learning the Bible more thoroughly, become truly intimate with the Lord, and direct our energies toward endeavors that help others. We seem to have a feeling of purpose that lessens the appeal of indiscriminate sexual attraction. By no means am I implying that we are no longer susceptible to temptation. A culture that valued fleeting pleasure still targets us all, but we can say no more readily now that we have a fresh perspective. Since being able to say no when our integrity is at jeopardy is a sign of true strength, we can now see why the scriptures extol the freedom that chastity gives. Giving up casual sex creates room for a special inner power, which may seem counterintuitive. By choosing to protect our sexuality, we are essentially telling God and ourselves that we have faith in a higher power and that we are not dependent on fleeting gratifications to feel whole. We feel a sense of internal unity when we make this decision, as though every piece of our soul has begun to function as a whole in harmony with the divine promises for our lives. I also like to keep in mind that living a life free of fornication does not imply that we must give up happiness. Rather, it means that our future joys will be far more profound and regret-free. When they do meet the person they want to spend the rest of their lives with, many men attest that it was well worth the wait, since the union is full of freshness, respect, and a communion that goes beyond the passions of the moment. Additionally, there is always the option to start again, ask God for forgiveness, and begin a new chapter in situations when the individual has a history of relationships that do not align with biblical values. Knowing that our Creator is willing to accept everyone who wishes to follow the path of righteousness, regardless of their background, is a good thing. He asks us to live a renewed life in the present and the future, which I find remarkable, rather than condemning us for our past actions, focusing on physical discipline. We frequently search for acceptance from others that only God can provide, or we seek solace for a need that can only be met by a close relationship with the Almighty. When we comprehend this idea, we become less susceptible to being tempted by the provocative pictures that are in the media, invitations to infrequent gatherings, and promises of immediate gratification. Now that we have an internal filter, we can identify what truly strengthens us and what could jeopardize our tranquility. Since chastity is about saying yes to a life of meaning, clarity, and genuine connection, rather than just saying no to sex, its strength lies in this filter. The culture of unbridled want, which frequently exalts bodies and propagates the myth that freedom entails acting without regard for the repercussions, ultimately proves to be a trap when the professed freedom devolves into slavery to desire. I have witnessed men devoured by jealousy, tormented by their consciences, divided between multiple relationships, and unable to find the calm they sought. However, it is encouraging to see someone who has chosen to safeguard their body and soul, since they are typically calm, forward-thinking, and, most importantly, respectful of both themselves and those around them. And this is the outcome of daily dedication, a quest for God's presence, and ongoing education about the importance of holiness rather than luck or chance. The best part is that the benefits of this path are not limited to sexual life. Rather, they are evident in many areas of life. This is because the same discipline that helps us avoid fornication also affects our financial situation, health, interpersonal relationships, capacity for forgiveness, and even our capacity for lofty dreams. I'm thrilled to announce that my new book, Alchemy of the Gods, is now accessible to everyone. It delves deeply into the concepts of Kundalini, crystalline oil, and spiritual liberation, three pillars that can significantly improve the lives of any earnest seeker. Every page of this work offers insights that awaken a greater sense of how to interact with vital energy, purify the mind, and expand consciousness. I, Layert, have devoted a great deal of time to researching and experiencing these issues. You will have access to a path of self-discovery and personal strengthening by becoming proficient in internal processes and establishing a connection with these heavenly energies. You will realize that the human essence itself contains potent keys to genuine and long-lasting transformation. Because this book is available in digital and print media, as well as audiobook format, you can consume the information whichever best suits your lifestyle. With just one click, you can easily acquire your copy and begin your trip, because the link is included in both the description and the pinned remark. I say this with assurance because, throughout the research that goes into Alchemy of the Gods, I discovered that seminal retention is a basic technique for boosting vibration and nourishing inner energy, which helps us overcome the obstacles that prevent us from realizing our full potential. I think you will have access to an unmatched experience of spiritual development, cerebral clarity, and emotional depth if you combine these findings with my semen retention content. First of all, there's a novel idea that may surprise you. The Semen Retention Success Path is the ultimate manual you've been looking for if you're prepared to change your life and increase your energy to completely new heights. The 6 main themes of semen retention's content are compiled in this more than 2-hour audiobook, which is packed with insightful knowledge for your personal growth. Imagine setting off on an evolutionary and self-discovering quest that transcends traditional bounds. Every track in this collection is intended to elevate your consciousness to a higher level, releasing a wealth of life energy and reviving your vigor while advancing your personal development in a real and long-lasting manner. This audiobook will provide you a master key to attaining tangible and instant outcomes in addition to theory. Additionally, you will receive a 30% discount on my unique ebook, The Art of Semen Retention for Men, when you buy the Semen Retention Success Path. 20 additional pages of this ebook are devoted to effective strategies for your materials. What drives me most is the realization that we can create the ideal environment for success in all areas of our lives by investing in information and strengthening our connection with sexual energy. This attracts self-confidence, discipline, and abundance. In an effort to further enhance this community, I also encourage you to explore the new channel members option, where you can potentially become a tremendous supporter of my work. Being a member of this exclusive club will grant you particular benefits, like access to more content, more candid discussions, and involvement in an environment that motivates me to offer news and exclusive information on a regular basis. This extra drive will undoubtedly enable me to provide even more worthwhile content, influencing the lives of all those who follow us. I want every member to feel like an active participant in a movement that aims for spiritual and personal growth. Combining the knowledge found in Alchemy of the Gods, the techniques outlined in the Semen Retention Success Path, the resources in the ebook The Art of Semen Retention for Men, and the novel way of participating in the new Channel Members tab. This is your opportunity to embark on a journey of transformation. By nurturing your vital energy, developing your spiritual essence, and releasing the obstacles that stand in the way of your full potential, today can be the day you make the decision to take a quantum leap towards your true self. I'm here to welcome everyone who wants to explore this world of transformation, and the doors are open. Get the more than 2-hour-long Semen Retention Success Path now. Enjoy a 30% discount on the ebook The Art of Semen Retention for Men, and learn how understanding and enhancing our inner energy can propel our spiritual and personal growth to new heights. Take advantage of the chance to explore the new members area and sign up as an active supporter to get exclusive perks and assist us in constantly broadening our horizons. This opportunity is the first step toward a life full of significance, vitality, and communion with spiritual energies. I have no doubt that working together, we can achieve much more than we could have ever dreamed. While the vice of sexual immorality seems to spread to other areas of disorder, virtue seems to be contagious, spreading to all areas of people who choose a controlled life. This viewpoint inspires me to stand my ground, to support others, and to demonstrate that there is, in fact, a potential alternative for those who are fed up with conforming to the social norm that promotes getting general as a sign of manhood. Being a real man means being in charge of your own body, making sensible decisions about when and with whom to share intimacy, and avoiding flashy anecdotes that only serve to highlight the immaturity of those who haven't yet realized the true significance of sexuality. I am aware that there is frequently a lack of guidance, and occasionally some brothers tell me that they don't see the need to wait and that they can't think of a rational way to conserve their sexual energy. However, after witnessing the emotional and physical harm that several partners can inflict, I recognize that this apparent freedom is actually a huge delusion. Not to add that contemporary science acknowledges the significance of emotional commitment and participation, and the influence that sporadic relationships have on our psychological states. Furthermore, it is simpler to comprehend why God calls us to respect marriage and refrain from engaging in promiscuous relationships when we integrate this information with biblical wisdom. Although the word was written in a different historical period, human nature is still the same, and the hurt caused by misguided closeness hasn't changed and never will. The truth is that every decision has repercussions, and choosing to engage in sexual activity might lead to regret or potentially painful consequences down the road. Perhaps this is the reason why seminal retention is such a liberating discipline. It forces us to examine ourselves and determine whether our motivations are a genuine desire or merely a covert lack, and whether our goals are to create something meaningful or merely to appease our ego. It's a call to maturity, and maturity means forgoing short-term pleasures in favor of a bigger payoff down the road. And when we receive this reward, we come to understand that it is far more significant than any little episode of madness. As the notion that everything is permitted became practically a cultural mandate throughout the decades, I believe we are regaining principles that were lost. How anything and who instead became enmeshed in bad relationships or addictions, suffering and causing agony to others. Furthermore, the divine will is good and faultless, and has nothing to do with this. Conversely, seminal retention indicates a course towards self-control and clarity. Naturally, I acknowledge that overcoming temptation can be difficult, But it is in these situations that we develop because we are compelled to turn to prayer, ask reliable friends for support, and devise plans to keep our minds focused on the positive. This, in my opinion, is character development that exemplifies the fruit of the Spirit, which includes temperance, rather than a dead religious rule. Being balanced and not always influenced by one's physical desires is what temperance is. Along the way, I also came to understand that temperance brings peace, respect, and avoids regrets. I also observe that many people may feel uneasy when we discuss adultery and unbridled desire in public, since we may be touching on issues and behaviors that they may not want to abandon. However, I think it is our responsibility as God-fearing men who recognize the value of sexual restraint to spread this message of transformation and hope. It is meant to demonstrate that there is something more profound and complete in store for us, not to condemn those who are caught in this cycle. And it takes time, prayer, and dedication to build something bigger. I believe that by choosing to stick with this course every day, I am laying a strong foundation for my future family, and the purpose God has given me in this world. And as I reflect on my progress, I notice that I don't regret turning down opportunities that would have tempted me to engage in adultery. Conversely, I take pride in having remained loyal to who I am, to biblical values, and to my desire to uphold my relationship with the Creator. It also makes me happy to be able to share this process with my channel's mostly male audience, because I know that many people go through similar struggles, whether they are caused by unstructured homes, friends' influence, a busy work life that can cause emotional needs, or just the pressure of the digital world, which seems to constantly bombard us with lust-inducing images. Everybody is a work in progress, and the practice of seminal retention helps us develop into men who are not only physically powerful, but also have strong morals and know how to stand up for what they believe in. This inner power is demonstrated not just in the sexual domain, but also in how we handle difficulties, cope with annoyances, and stick to our convictions. All of this ultimately serves to highlight the glory of God, who makes it possible for us to live above material norms. Every morning, I reaffirm my belief that having sex just depletes my energy and concentration, rather than adding anything to me. I can attest to how simple it is to fall into this trap when we are not paying attention, or when we let ourselves be seduced by false promises of unrestricted pleasure. However, I am confident that the discipline I have gained through self-control will prepare me for far more significant rewards, such as a future bride, a family that is united, a fulfilling ministry, or just a peaceful heart, free of the scars and complexes brought on by unhealthy relationships. Organized. I find more justifications to continue this habit at every stage of life. I've heard from a lot of men, particularly those between the ages of 25 and 34, that they want to establish something substantial, achieve professional success, and have financial stability, but that they occasionally end up undermining these objectives by getting caught up in nighttime adventures. Can deplete your financial resources, emotional well-being, and vitality. In this case, seminal retention serves as a reminder that there is a method of sobriety that not only preserves dignity, but also offers useful advantages. It also serves as reinforcement for the resolve. We are better able to concentrate, make judgments with greater clarity, and are less likely to get caught up in misunderstandings that could take us off course. Because it is evidence that these concepts, which go far beyond religious theory, affect all aspects of our lives, I want to share in my channel the stories of men who were able to achieve professional success. Sexuality. It is satisfying to see how things work out, since it is not meant to punish or limit us, but rather to allow us to live stable, fulfilling relationships free from regrets and resentment. Many continue to argue that biblical patterns are very ancient for such a developed society, or that waiting for sex in the framework of marriage, or until there is a meaningful commitment, would be unrealistic. However, every time I see how many homes are left unfinished, how many kids lack parental guidance, and how many people hoard romantic frustrations, I come to the realization that while modernity can make us incredibly efficient in certain ways, it hasn't yet fixed the most fundamental problems with our emotive nature. God's word is still relevant and effective today because we still require guidance and appropriate boundaries to keep us from slipping into destructive patterns. Every time I go deeper into these thoughts, I believe that seminal retention also elevates my view of women, because I no longer view them as sources of immediate gratification, but rather as God's daughters, human beings with their own struggles and the same dignity as myself. This shift in viewpoint keeps me from objectifying the female body and encourages me to treat it with a respect that I did not previously have. It's a constant process, but as I've learned to appreciate all facets of intimacy and to wait for the right moment, I can plainly see how my relationship style has changed, and I am aware that if I were forced to engage in fornication, which perpetuates a consuming dynamic as though humans were expendable goods, this position would be unachievable. Since it doesn't support the continuation of a pattern of shallow relationships that might cause hurt and insecurity, I view seminal retention as a lesson in love for others. And because I feel in line with what Scripture says, this love in turn leads me to a much more genuine spirituality. For people who wish to live a full life, this coherence between faith and practice is essential. I would never trade the wonderful experience of being at peace with my conscience and the Creator for a few fleeting moments of unwavering pleasure. Furthermore, it is reassuring to know that forgiveness and restoration are possible even if we make mistakes or fail. All we need to do is repent from our hearts. Therefore, it all boils down to this everyday decision of whether or not to embrace heavenly principles, protecting our hearts from the deceptions of an illusion-selling culture. My belief that adultery is not something that only involves the body, as many argue, seems to be strengthened every day. It affects our emotional growth, moves our essence, and most importantly, obstructs our relationship with God, since we are willfully disobeying what He has set up for our safety. However, when we work to walk in line with the Father's desire, seminal retention is a path that leads to a closer meeting with Him. Consequently, this method offers discernment, mental tranquility, safety, and, of course, the hope of a complete emotional life at the appropriate moment. Men who claim to be free from sexual addictions, who are regaining their self-esteem, and who at last see the worth of their own body as the Holy Spirit's temple, have messaged me on the Gods of Semen channel. Others tell me that they have been getting ready for marriage in different ways, praying with their partners, setting unimaginable boundaries, and discovering that true commitment and emotional and spiritual attunement that comes before the physical act are what truly determine affection and companionship, rather than a sex foundation, and even mental wellness, if you already embrace chastity and the retention practice. In balance. Although contemporary culture promotes the contrary, I prefer to keep in mind that not everything that is in style is healthy, and that swimming against the tide can be brave, but the rewards are incomparable to any instant gratification. Being able to offer this vision brings me great satisfaction, because I know that many guys like myself are looking for a genuine path that makes sense both before God and before themselves. I can plainly see from my trajectory that every time I chose purity, I avoided a potential regret up front, and every time I remained steadfast in my seminal retention, I felt a sort of personal triumph that bolstered my faith and respect for myself. This positive cycle motivates me to keep going, to stick with my discipline, and to demonstrate to others who follow me that seeking healthy sexuality within the bounds of God is not oppressive or outdated. Instead, it is a route of growth and emancipation when we start along a path of self-awareness and calm after being swept away by the world's craziness. As I examine this chapter on fornication and the culture of unlimited desire, I want to reiterate that I completely agree with the notion that treating sex as a form of amusement or as a means of unrestrained exploration is extremely detrimental. This, in my opinion, is detrimental to the body as well as the soul, and contradicts the holiness that God intended for us. With every word, I am challenged to keep promoting seminal retention as a concrete response to the trivialization of intimacy because it reminds us that there is a much greater beauty reserved for those who can wait, and refocuses our attention on values that go beyond instant gratification. If you still believe that these biblical ideas are out of date, I encourage you to consider the society we live in, which is full of shaky relationships, emotional scars, and a never-ending need for anything to satisfy our inner emptiness. The teaching of chastity is relevant and essential in this situation because it provides a way out of the logic of affective and sexual consumerism. We are urged to practice self-control, develop a moral heart, and focus our energies on things that truly build and grow rather than becoming lost in fleeting pleasures. As a result, we talk about a total mental flip, where desire stops being sir and instead becomes a servant, serving a higher good. We discover on this trip that our identity extends to the degree that we stand in who God says we are, rather than being restricted to our libido or sexual performance. Living in this pattern of purity, in my opinion, means walking in a lifelong alliance with the one who created us, understanding that our decisions have a significant impact on both our own and other people's futures. Seminal retention, which teaches us the value of waiting, the significance of viewing the other as an integral being, and the reminder that we are, above all, children of the Creator, called to a life of righteousness, is unquestionably one of the seeds we need to plant if we want to have deep and lasting effective relationships. It's not always easy to talk freely about fornication and chastity in a society that frequently mocks such concepts, but every transformation story I hear motivates me to keep going, because I know that many people long for this change, even if they're not always sure where to begin. I begin by restating that acknowledging our internal difficulties and admitting our weakness are perfectly acceptable. In fact, it is in these moments of weakness that God reveals His strength, enabling us to resist the temptations that bind us so severely. I can recall times when I was on the verge of slipping back into old norms, but I was able to maintain my resolve with the assistance of others who share my religion, prayer, and the Bible. Additionally, each minor triumph has evolved into a step toward greater maturity. This maturity is demonstrated by the way we confront our emotions and inclinations. We learn to recognize their source and look for sources of supply that truly satisfy, like genuine love and communion with God, rather than allowing them to rule us. I think that if we are able to stop having affairs, we discover that we don't need to be in several relationships to feel valuable, since our worth is found in understanding who we are in Christ. Because our relationships are founded on spiritual and emotional affinities rather than sensual pleasures, we also appreciate them more. And this completely changes the nature of interactions, allowing us to feel a unique and powerful complicity. Previously, we would have focused on the number of people we could defeat. Now, we would focus on how much we can grow and change, gaining self-control, patience, and true love that puts the needs of others before our own. And in this situation, having sex is no longer a pastime. Rather, it is the crowning of a strong, fortunate, and profoundly meaningful relationship that endures beyond the fleeting desire and becomes ingrained in the routine, the difficulties, and the pleasures of the shared day. When I consider this goal, I am personally rejuvenated because I understand that the biblical advice to abstain from fornication has a far deeper significance. It is a loving instruction that protects us from emotional, mental, and spiritual consequences and improves our perception of both ourselves and others, not just a rule that forbids us from enjoying ourselves. And because it places us in a state of perpetual alertness, attention to our motivations, and most importantly, reverence for our body, which is inhabited by the Holy Spirit, seminal retention is a tremendous ally in this process. I am inspired to spread this message when I consider the number of issues that may be prevented if there was a deeper understanding than what fornication creates. There are countless tales of children growing up without their father's presence, of infidelity destroying homes, and of hearts broken by romantic letdowns that could have been prevented with a commitment made before intimacy began. In defending the culture of unbridled want, society overlooks these repercussions or dismisses them as unimportant details. However, the truth is that every action has a cascading effect, and the effective life is not a game where we can press the button reset and erase everything. The soul retains a record of our experiences, which mold us into either good or bad people. By adopting chastity and seminal retention, we can avoid the pitfalls that so many of us have already fallen into and consciously and wisely shape our history. I am also aware that many young people are crying because they don't feel satisfied by promiscuity, but they are unsure of how to begin making changes. And the solution is to go back to the source, which is God, and let Him change our perspective while mending old wounds, shattering sinful patterns, and teaching us the importance of genuine love. I sincerely believe that every step we take toward sexual purity is a step toward being our best selves, as I have already seen and witnessed this transformation in many lives, including mine. Previously, I believed this discussion to be nothing more than antiquated moralism, but now I see that it is a principle that endures over the ages, because the word of the Most High is unchangeable, regardless of how nations evolve in their beliefs and practices. I'm coming to believe that while seminal retention thrives in a society of hope and trust, fornication thrives in a culture of instant gratification. It is lovely to observe how this wish is realized when men choose this course because they serve as role models for others, demonstrate that it is possible to restore values that appear to have been lost, and start a positive cycle of change. Our age, in my opinion, has a great chance to restore these values and demonstrate via our example that chastity is not only feasible, but also fulfilling and freeing. The outcome makes up for any temporary renunciation, so I feel compelled to encourage everyone to keep going despite mockery or criticism. In the end, we realize that our oneness with God is what truly satisfies us and gives our sexuality purpose. It no longer serves as a frantic pursuit of pleasure, but rather is a part of a greater endeavor that is connected to love, family, commitment, and divine favor. Seminal retention acts as a solid anchor during this process, keeping us from being swept away by the hedonistic flood. Every day we decide to live a life free from fornication and short-lived adventures is a day we honor our Creator, respect, and set the stage for future relationships that are genuinely healthy. The message, in my opinion, is quite clear. There are two paths that lie ahead of us. One that adheres to the logic of the world and invites us to have as many relationships as we like without considering the repercussions. And another that adheres to the logic of God's kingdom and calls us to live in holiness and purity. We also get exactly what we sow. I end up reaping the benefits of anguish, bitterness, insecurity, breakups, and most importantly, a growing distance from God when I plant immorality. I get respect, maturity, peace of mind, and the satisfaction that comes from knowing that my body and spirit are being saved for something bigger when I plant chastity and retention. This decision is unquestionably worthwhile. As the leader of the gods of Semen Channel Layert, I can assure you that this chapter on fornication and the culture of unbridled desire reflects the values I uphold and advocate, and I wholeheartedly concur that chastity is the antithesis required for a society intoxicated by unchecked stimuli. I'm honored to share these thoughts, and I really believe that everyone who reads or hears them can if they so choose, begin, or strengthen their own path to purity, and experience the fulfilling sensation of being able to say no to things that don't help them reach their full potential. I chose to walk in this manner, and I wouldn't trade this reality for any false hope of instant gratification. I'm here to urge everyone to seek the same conviction in God because He never fails in His care and promises for those who honor Him in all areas, even sexual. This is where I believe, where my time and strength are.